Hi, welcome to This Must Be Talking Heads. My name is Rodney. I'm the world's best and only Talking Heads historiologist, and today I've got a special video where I'm going to be talking about the David Byrne tour from 2025-26, the Who Is This Guy tour. First, some reflections on the set list and the presentation of the show, because I've been holding off, waiting for the show to roll through Australia so that I could check it out without having too many spoilers. But now I've got a lot to say about it, lots of thoughts that I want to share about it, and I'll divide this up into two sections. The first section being sort of general reflections on the tour and how everything is put together and what it might mean. And then the second part, my specific experiences of the shows that I went to and some of the unique things that came up. And there's a few interesting little side details that you may want to stick around for. But so that it's not too self-indulgent, you can just listen to the first part if all you're interested in is reflections on the tour. So let's go. So the Who Is This Guy tour is the first new tour since American Utopia, and it might not seem like that long since we had the American Utopia tour, but if you think about it, that show was put together a long time ago and toured for a long time, went to Broadway, had an extended run on Broadway. It was with us for a long time, and I think compared to the previous sort of cycles that David was in, release an album, tour it, take a year off, release an album, tour it, take a year off. To a degree, we were overdue for a big original tour from David, where he just rethought what he wanted to put out into the world. It seemed like American Utopia was kind of the culmination of a lot of things that he had been thinking about and chipping away at and experimenting with over the years of touring in the decades before that. And it seemed like that was maybe going to be hard to top. But for all of the flowers that people, or maybe they give it nothing but flowers, for my money, this Who Is This Guy tour at least rivals it, if not tops it, for the presentation that is put on. Some of you will have seen the show. Some of you may be wanting to see the show. If, like me, you want to avoid spoilers, this may not be the video for you. But if you want to maybe relive some of the details with me and go back to your own memories of seeing the show, or if you want to go into the show with a bit of an idea of what to look out for, this might be helpful. The first reflection I made was that before the show started, the stage is set. And if you haven't seen the way the show is staged, there's like big screens everywhere. And by everywhere, I mean everywhere. The back, the sides, it sort of curves around. And even the floor can illuminate. And by that, I mean, it's not necessarily a projection. It's more like a big LCD screen that can project an image back. And the way this starts is like a landscape of like a moon. And when the show starts, David and a few others walk out and they sing Heaven. And in the background, rising, is, a planet Earth. And then David says, well, here it is, our heaven, the only one we've got. It says a lot without maybe saying too much. The only one we've got. It's the only heaven there is. It's the only earth we've got. There's a lot to unpack just in those couple of sentences. That's the genius of David Byrne, right? Essentially, we start to get a taste for what the show's going to be, which is songs and some talking. And there was a period during the Talking Heads era where if you got any talking out of David, it was a real rare treat. He'd often just say, here's our song, and it's called this. I know over the years he's told a few little stories and embellished a few little things, but I think he takes that to a new level in this show. So we go from Heaven into Everybody Laughs. This is when the beats start to kick in. And I mean, whether you know the new album or not, to go straight into Everybody Laughs really says, yep, this is going to be a dancey, clappy sort of show. And we're going to be mixing it all up. Everybody Laughs is a little bit of a banger, so I didn't mind that. And then from Everybody Laughs, he goes into And She Was, and I've got a bit to say about this. He's been playing And She Was for a long time, but this is the first time that I think it really unlocked something that was key to David, key to the show, key to a lot of things. And it ties in with the idea of, like I said, David's sort of talking a little bit more. Like he has before when he's played this song live, he tells this little preamble story about knowing a girl in high school who used to lie in a field by the Yoo-Hoo chocolate drink factory and take LSD, and he said, I wrote the song about that. But different this time. And it's curious that it was different this time. He tells the story a little bit differently and adds a few extra details where he says, I was in high school, I knew this girl, and she seemed very happy. I think being happy and the pursuit of happiness and struggling to find happiness is one of the big themes of the show and of the last album that he's done. But the way he tells the story, again, he goes, she was really happy. And I said to her, what makes you so happy? And then she said to me, you know that field out behind the Yoo-Hoo chocolate drink factory? And he goes, yeah. And she goes, well, I go and I lie down by the field, by the freeway there. And he goes, oh. And then she goes, and then I take LSD. And he goes, ah. And it gets a good laugh. The crowd gives him a good reaction. Before he starts playing the song, he goes, at the time, back in high school, I wasn't ready yet to take LSD and take that path towards happiness. He teases it and he pauses for a second. He goes, but then a few years later... And then he goes, he sort of laughs, he gives a chuckle, he's like, they're getting it. A few years later, I wrote a song about it, and then he plays the song. Now, I mean, my question would be, why tell the story differently this time? Like I say, I think the pursuit of happiness and the struggle to try and find happiness and how other people find happiness is one of the key themes of the show. But I mean, I think without saying it, David's maybe alluding to the fact that throughout his life and maybe even more recently, he's been experimenting with some psychedelics. No, surely not, Rod. You're saying no. Are you telling me that this guy has been experimenting with psychedelics? This guy, you think this guy has been experimenting with psychedelics? I'm shocked. I'm shocked, I say. Draw your own conclusions there, I suppose. From there, he goes into Strange Overtones, one of the older songs that's become one of the staples of his live shows. He busts out Houses in Motion, which I was grooving to. And I've always thought that that was a bit of an underrated song from the Talking Heads catalog. Then he goes into T-Shirt. This is that song. I've made videos about this. You would listen to live recordings from the early shows on the tour and people would be cheering and it was annoying because you couldn't hear what the lyrics were. And then they properly released the song, a studio version of the song recently. It's the one that if people aren't having fun by then, this one really kicks things up a gear and all of the slogans that come up on the screen get everybody cheering. I didn't hear anyone complaining or rolling their eyes. You know, obviously the one, you know, the city kicks ass or Make America Gay Again, they obviously get big cheers. Nothing But Flowers, an interesting way that this one is presented and staged. They sing the whole song and I believe the backdrop, the setting for it is like an office environment or at least a building environment. By now there's a lot of people on stage dancing and moving around. The musicians are moving around. The dancers are doing a great job guiding your attention and so what. But it reaches a point where they sort of do a 360 and they wave their arm as they sing, and now it's turned into a cornfield, and then the building turns into a cornfield. And I'm not saying that the moment doesn't work. It's very impressive visually, and it obviously aligns with the lyrics in a sort of satisfying way. Isn't it about wanting to go back to the way things were with all the conveniences and you know, I think everyone did a great job presenting those visuals. I'm just not 100% sure that the visuals work with the meaning of the song, but it doesn't matter. I don't want to get too hung up about that. This Must Be the Place. Obviously, this is like that enduring favorite of theirs. This Must Be the Place is like a bit of a centerpiece to Stop Making Sense. It's a bit of like an inflection point. Again, I think here being anchored more or less in the middle of the set list, it makes it another anchor point. After that, it turns and goes into What Is the Reason for It, one of my favorite singles from the new album. If you remember the film clip, it takes little sketches that David did and animates them into people doing things and moving around. And when that music video came out, it was revealed that a lot of that was generated using AI, which I know some people bristled at and said, oh, AI, I don't know about this. I'm sort of either against AI or see a lot of the negatives of AI, and I can understand that, and I definitely relate to that. So to see the way this is presented in the live show, which is, I mean, for argument's sake, the easiest way to describe this is that it's like they're playing the song inside the film clip. But the little character people are sort of pulling up and down black shades. They animate those little characters, and that's how the song is presented. The question that it got me thinking about as I was watching it was, oh, is this all generated with AI as well? Maybe this is all AI generated too. And unfortunately, that got me thinking about, wait. We're seeing a lot of visuals here. We're seeing a lot of videos. We're seeing a lot of different things. Is all of this AI generated? What does it mean for all of this to be AI generated? I mean, not to say that like sent me spiraling into an existential mental whirlwind to think like, hey, is David really here? Am I really here? It wasn't anything like that, but I was just like, the feeling just swept over me of like, oh no, this is either very good or maybe not so good. I don't have solid answers, so I can't speak either way. It would be a little bit disappointing if all of it was AI generated or even most of it was AI generated. I don't know, so I don't want to dwell too much on that one. Then we get back into Like Humans Do, and you've probably seen the photos or video clips of this. I wondered whether he was going to play the avant-garde and use this treatment for that song. It turns out it was for Like Humans Do. But this is the one where the band are on stage moving. The moves are not over the top. It's a few simple steps and a few spins and stuff like that. But behind them, there's like a room projected and all of the same figures mapped one to one, including all of their movements and everything, and all of the instruments that they're holding. They're acting out the same performance that's happening on the stage in front of you live, but behind them is a recording, and in the recording, all of the people have animal masks on. Independent to any of my thoughts about the drug and psychedelic stuff, I I had someone message me and say, hey, if watching this show at times, it just makes me feel like I'm on mushrooms or something. I feel like I'm tripping out of my head here watching this. This is one of my favorite parts of the show. This is, I think, the part of the show that works absolutely the best. When I think back on this show, I'll think back to this moment when they're singing like humans do as a bunch of humans are anthropomorphized into animals. We come out of like humans do into Don't Be Like That. Another sort of grower, another sentimental favorite, I think, from the new album. People really seem to like that one. Independence Day, a really surprising track, a real throwback. I would never have guessed in a million years that they were going to pull that one out. And then another absolute banger, Slippery People. And, you know, my only little gripe about Slippery People, and I said this when American Utopia was doing the rounds, was that when he gets to the sort of scatting bit, the beep, 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 he gets a bit too childish with it for my tastes. Not to say he has to do it the way he did it on Stop Making Sense. A version of that section that's maybe a little bit more earnest and a little bit less baby talky might land better with me, but look, it still jams along. People still love it. Still people like the call and response. People love to shout out. And it's another moment that brings people together, him and the audience together, and him and the performers together. Another success. The next song, song number 14, is where we get a little bit of a variation in terms of the shows. And he's been switching out these two songs for the whole tour. Going to see two different shows means that I had the benefit of seeing both. So I can talk a little bit about both of them, which is great. At the Melbourne show, he played Moisturizer Thing. And at the Adelaide show that I went to, he played I Met the Buddha at a downtown party. And I think it was at this point where he did a little bit of different stage banter for each one. So at the Melbourne show, I remember there was a moment where he said, you know, sometimes we make judgments about people based on the way they look. And I want to do a quick experiment. And he lined up a couple of the ensemble and he threw out the question, who do you think on this stage might be, I think it was like an astrophysicist or something like that, a qualified astrophysicist. And he was like, who do you think, just by looking at them, who do you think it might be? And he was like, is it Hannah? Is it this person? I think it ended up being Ray. Not that I know who all these people are, but anyway, I think he's like, oh, it was Ray. Yeah, or something like that. And then they went into Moisturizer Thing, which is obviously about, you know, a fantasy where David puts moisturizer on that is anti-aging and he turns into a 3-year-old. And he gets judged. So the point is, don't judge people by the way they look. That's obviously like fraught with danger if you do that. At the Adelaide show that I went to, he played I Met the Buddha at a downtown party. And that one started with a little bit of a different bit of banter where he put up on the screen, you know, hey, here's what different people think the Buddha looked like. Some people think he looked like this, a young guy. Some people think he looked like this, a big guy with massive earlobes. And then he goes, you know, good thing one day I was at a downtown party and I met him. Now, Moisturizer Thing, less so, but I think specifically I Met the Buddha at the downtown party maybe supports my theory that David may have been coping with things with a little bit of chemical assistance. One of the other things that I remember, I think it was at the Melbourne show, but I don't remember it from the Adelaide show, was that there's a point where David shows some footage on the screens behind him and he's like, look at this. This happened during lockdowns. This was people in Italy out on their balconies and they're singing to each other and they're singing to connect to one another. People are singing for each other and people go out to listen to people singing. And they're out there singing on the Italian holiday Liberation Day, which is a day when Italians celebrate their liberation from fascism. I think that ties into a couple of different themes, one being COVID and the effects of COVID and lockdowns. And a lot of this material obviously comes out of that environment and sets the scene for what does it mean to go to a David Byrne show in a post-lockdown era? What's he going to say about it? What thoughts does he have about it? And also ties into modern events. In David's usual fashion, he's sort of referring to, you know, what might be happening in the US without directly referring to it. There will be a few other more explicit references to that later on. But the next song that he goes into is My Apartment Is My Friend, which is a COVID lockdown song, if ever you've heard one. He shows on the stage, hey, here's a photo. This is my New York apartment. It's a pretty nice apartment as far as New York goes. You know, you may have a house with a driveway and a yard. I don't have those things, but as far as New York apartments go, it's nice and it's mine. And it's what I've got. He says I spend a lot of time in here and I read a lot of books and I watch a lot of nature documentaries and I learned how to cook Indian and Mexican dishes. And I should say we see a photo of an apartment. We don't know for sure if that's David's apartment. I mean, I assume probably it is, but we don't know for sure. But anyway, it just starts with a static shot of an apartment and it's all stretched out all over the stage. I twigged straight away, like, oh, this must be like a 3D photo. Maybe the thing's going to spin around. And then about halfway through the song, as the instrumental break sort of comes in, the stage does start to spin around and you get this sort of 3D view of the apartment. But a couple of threads to pull out of that, like I say, the post-COVID thread. And then there's also the thread of like anthropomorphizing buildings and spaces. And also the flip side of that, which you might get in something like This Must Be the Place, is the reflections of people and their physicality as being spaces, a home or a place. Literally, this must be the place. So when I get into my reflections on the specific shows that I went to, I'll be able to say a little bit more about that. We go from the apartment is my friend. The apartment's kind of whizzing around and then it freezes and turns to black and white. And then he goes into Hard Times, the Paramore cover, which is pretty good. Obviously that bangs along. Very happy to hear it. I thought it was one of the great little singles that he put out. It's not on any of his albums, the cover. And I mean, I think that's an underrated track from David. Despite being a cover, I think that's one of David's best tracks for a long time. And then we get this triple punch to end out the main set. The first two I have the most to say about. So first was Psycho Killer. Obviously, and I made videos about this as well, the first time he's played it in 20 years or so. He starts off by walking over to one corner of the stage. This spotlight hits him and you can see behind him this bright white light with a black silhouette in the middle. He starts walking across the stage and the shadow moves with him. If you look closely and you know what's coming, you can see pretty obviously that it's not really him. But if you're further back and you don't know what to expect, it's quite convincing. But he gets to the center of the stage and he stops and turns and faces the audience while the shadow behind him walks out of the circle of the light and then comes back and is like, oh. And then David walks forward and the shadow gets bigger and bigger. And then David walks off to the side and the shadow gets really big and it fills everything. It's just a neat little bit of stagecraft. It's an interesting song to play musically from the perspective of, one of the threads of the show is about how to be happy, how to find happiness, the struggle of finding happiness, connecting with people and the struggle of connecting with people. Maybe that's the angle that this comes in from. But obviously, the song Psycho Killer was like the focal point of the band's 50th anniversary that happened recently. They released a music video for it and so on. I said when I first saw that he was playing this that might be one of the reasons why the song was maybe on his mind, why he might have thought, yeah, people really love this song and it's just endured. The story of the song is that the song has endured. So it must be doing something right if it's endured this long and if people love it so much. If resilience, bringing people together are themes of the show, then it makes sense to play it. One of the other reflections about the way he plays Psycho Killer is that he does acknowledge at the start, this is a song that was arranged by Arthur Russell. Now, obviously, Tina David and Chris wrote Psycho Killer. It wasn't written by Arthur Russell, but when he says it was arranged by Arthur Russell, he means the strings, and there's a version out there that you can hear that includes Arthur Russell. Obviously, he's played that song a bajillion times. He's played it on a lot of tours. He needed a new element, a new angle into it. So obviously thinking, well, maybe I'll still play it live, but I'll play not even the canon version. I'll play that Arthur Russell version. It has a few different lyrics, like it substitutes in that early verse that he substituted out later. It has the string arrangements and so on. So it's some way to breathe a bit of fresh perspective into it. And Life During Wartime, one of the big tentpoles of the live show, everyone's on their feet dancing and clapping and singing. One thing about the staging is that a little bit like Psycho Killer, it starts off with a little bit of a cheeky joke and then it goes somewhere else. This performance of Life During Wartime, obviously he just sort of bangs through the song and jams through it. And then it reaches a point where stuff starts to appear on the screen and it starts with a shot of, it's a street shot by a mobile phone or something. And there's a lot of police presence and crowd control presence, border patrol, ICE, police. They all blur together these days. But someone is on like a food service delivery bike and they're chasing him and he gets on his bike. And for a minute, it looks like you're not sure whether he's going to get away or whether they're going to catch him. And he does get away and everyone cheers and it's like, yeah, he got away. But then that is kind of just followed by a lot of fast edits, lots of footage, and I mean lots of footage of ICE and police harassing people, pushing them over, people protesting, them pushing back, lots of force, lots of tension, and the tension really builds and builds and builds. By the end of the song, the screens on the stage are split up into about 25 different little squares showing different little bits of videos. And one by one, they all start to flick to an overhead shot, someone on the ground looking up at the night sky, and there's a helicopter with a spotlight pointing down. And all of a sudden, one after another, all of them start to turn into that. All of a sudden, it just feels like the scene has just completely escalated and almost like there may be no escape from this, right? And it leaves you with this quite, I think, poignant feeling. It shows a little bit, not that David was wrestling with the song, but I'm sure he was always going to play it, but wrestling about what it means to play a song like that in a time like this. I suspect he was putting all of this together over a year ago and thinking about what it would be like to present that over a year ago. It's unfortunate and maybe a little bit sad that where he thought the world was going has turned out to be quite accurate. Last song in the main set list is Once in a Lifetime. Obviously a huge hit, an incredible song to end the main set on. You might hear that and you would be justified in thinking, well, that's going to be it. There may not be an encore because he's ending with the big one. The way the visuals are staged is sort of maybe not that impressive. It's just sort of more or less a static shot until the very end where the strobe starts to go off and it's like he's jumping up and down. Time isn't holding us. Time isn't after us and all that. And it's, everyone was jumping and having a great time and screaming and shit was flying in the air. It went wild and it was really great. Very cathartic, I would say. So yeah, a good way to end the main set for sure. No doubts about that. No questions about that. Everyone finished the main set extremely happy, fucking pumped, and ready to fucking get on with an amazing encore. Everybody's coming to my house. Again, I said that David tells this story, and he's told it before. I wrote this song and put it out, and it feels a bit existential. It feels like people are coming to my house and they're never going to leave, and I'm worried about it. What if they never leave? What if I'm never alone again? And then he says, and then I heard this version, these kids did this version, this choir did this version, and it just sounds so joyous. I want people to come to my house, and I'm never going to be alone again. It seemed like a different song, and he used to tell a story about how he tried to play it the happy way, but he said, I'm me and I can't get out of the way of me. And no matter what I do, I can't play it the happy way. It just doesn't work. I'm here to say one of the big successes of this tour, and I think one of the reasons why this song is part of the encore, is that it does work. It does now sound happy. It does now sound joyous. I mean, a show about connecting with people and the pursuit of happiness and trying to find joy. If this song didn't work, the whole show would fall apart if you put that song at the end. But it does work. And I mean, David may have been playing up a little bit. Every time I sing this song, it comes out the existential, sad way, not the happy way. He may have been playing that up for effect, but I think it's a big triumph that he managed to arrange and play the song the happy way. I mean, it's one of the meta threads of the show. You might see the show and not even know any of that other context. But if you do know that context, it heightens this show even more. There's only one song left. Now, if you've seen the show, you know what I'm about to say. But if you haven't seen the show, what song do you think I'm about to say? Most of you were correct. Burning Down the House, the huge screaming sing-along song. Every show that I went to, everybody in the fucking house was on their feet, stomping, clapping, cheering, singing along, screaming out the hook, Burning Down the House. A huge, again, cathartic moment, perfect ending to the show. One of the funny, cute little things is that as they're playing the end, they're all lined up at the front of the stage, and on the screen it shows credits. So you see David Byrne on this person on that, Maura Fosco doing this, Ray whatever doing that, Hannah, Sean, and all the dancers and everything. A cute, fun little way to end the show. And then they walked off, and I was standing there for a minute going, is there any more? Is that, I've had enough. I've eaten. I've left no crumbs. Is there a little bit more, or is that it? I've seen David shows where there were 2 encores, but look, it was the ending. But that said, if you go and look at the set lists online, you'll see there is a little bit of music playing. It's like exit music. So it's a bit like the bird sounds and the nature sounds that played before he formally started. It's just like a little send-off. It's not part of the show, but I guess it is. The song and ending and ascent is from Brian Eno's album Apollo, Atmospheres and Soundtracks, which was, it's one of his ambient albums. If you haven't heard it and you're not into ambient music, you may not get much out of it. But I mean, it came out around the same time, 1983, as Burning Down the House and as Speaking in Tongues. So even though David and Brian Eno had those successful years together collaborating, it almost starts to show a little bit of a drifting apart from those two in that way, Burning Down the House and what Brian was doing on the Apollo album. Just pointing that out. But the song specifically, I just Googled it to try and find what album it was on so I could be absolutely sure. And what came up was this Reddit thread. Then it says, some thoughts on an ending, ascent, and ambient music as an emotional tool to inspire change. So whatever wavelength that song is on, it seems like this person and David Byrne are on the same wavelength. So that's sort of it for the tour and the show, but I do want to get into some of the specifics about my experience. When the tour was announced, I knew I was going to go. I started to get incredibly excited. And I basically decided, last time David was out here for American Utopia, I couldn't go. I didn't get to see the tour live at all. And the other part of it was that I sort of felt like, David's getting older. I'm getting older. I don't know how many times I'm going to have left. I don't know how many more opportunities I'm going to get to see David Byrne live. So I decided I was going to go and see 2 shows. The shows were announced. Obviously, he wasn't just playing in Melbourne. He was playing in other cities. And immediately I kicked into gear of like, okay, how can I go to multiple shows? How can I do this? There have been years where David has played multiple shows in Melbourne, and I kick myself for not going to the multiple shows when he was just right here. I got 2 tickets to the Melbourne show. It was at the Sydney Myer Music Bowl. I was like, I'm going to buy 2 tickets and I'm going to try and get the best tickets I can, basically. Without getting into how horrendously expensive some of the tickets were, I got 2 pretty expensive tickets that were seats. Now, on the day, when we got there, a bunch of people that I knew were going, and I was trying to hook up with them to say, hey, let's get a drink before, let's hang out. And it seemed like that was all going to work out. I had a really stressful time getting there, and I was worried I was going to be late, but I got there with enough time to see the show, and I knew I had seats, so I knew I'd be fine. But other people that I knew who had general admission tickets and they were going to sit at the very back of the My Music Bowl on the lawn in general admission, they were like, oh, the queues are disgusting, 2 kilometers long. Some people were there an hour before so that they could line up and get reasonably good spots. Other people were not so lucky. Some people were just running in just as the show was starting, so my chances of seeing them were pretty much dashed. Wanted to go and buy merch and couldn't, and missed out on getting that amazing Melbourne poster that was doing the rounds, so I don't have one of those. It seems like it was only produced to sell at the show, so it seems like it's pretty hard to get a legit one now. And on the topic of that, if you wanted one and you're looking on eBay and going, oh great, they're selling them on there. No. People selling them who live in the States, people selling them in various sizes, they're not real. They're not real. That's not it. So look, if you want to get one of those, I mean, fill your boots, but it's not for me. So anyway, Melbourne show comes and goes. I had a great time. 1 down, 1 to go. We're walking back to the car, and then I happen to walk past the Forum Theatre in Melbourne, and then I spot, oh, look at that. They've got a big poster up for Jerry's show that's coming up in a couple of months. So I get a photo, and then my partner says, no, you've got to get in the photo. Go and I'll take a photo of you. So here's a photo of me standing in front of the poster. I can't wait to see you in a few months, Jerry. Very next morning, first thing, I was flying out to Adelaide. I was staying on the beach because I was like, I'm only here for 4 days. I'm going to stay on the beach. I'm not going to stay in the city. I'll go out to see the show, and then I'll come back to the beach. And we'll have a nice little 4-day trip. So the show in Melbourne was on Thursday, fly out Friday morning, get into Adelaide, check into the hotel Friday lunchtime, afternoon, get changed, hit the beach. Me and my daughter are splashing around in the water, having a great time in the sun. And I look over and I see a whole bunch of the dancers and members of the ensemble at the same beach, probably 20, 30 meters away from me. And I'm like, oh, they're here. And then I'm like, do I say something? Do I go over and say hi? Do I even say that I was at the show? Do I say what I do? Do I say I'm a podcaster that make YouTube videos? How do I even get into that? I'm having this conversation in my head while my kid is like yelling at the waves, wanting bigger waves to jump over and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, that's great. What if I go and say, no, like I can't. Can I find a way to put myself over there and just be like, I'm going over can I get past you? Oh, hey, I know you. I decide they're at the beach. It's their day off. Leave them alone. That's what I decided. There was just no way I was going to be that guy that walked up to someone and was like, oh, I was at show and you too. You were there. I was at show you at, and I going to show you. It's too stalkery and just too weird. So I didn't do any of that. Posted a little video saying, hey, I'm in Adelaide. It was a quick update about something else, but I was like, I'm in Adelaide to go and see the David Byrne show. And then my phone pings with a little message from an account called Byrne Dance. And I go, hi, Byrne Dance. They're like, hey, Rod, saw that you're going to the Adelaide David Byrne show. Wonder if you're coming to the Adelaide Fringe Festival. We'd love to have you be involved in the Byrne Dance show that we're putting on at the Adelaide Fringe Festival. And I was like, that's cool. Sorry though, I won't be able to come to that show. Can we have a chat about something another time? I'd love to know how it goes and da-da-da. And they're like, absolutely. And then by the time we get through with that, the phone pings again and they're like, actually, we have news to share. David Byrne has heard about our Fringe Festival show. We just met him. We just had a rehearsal and we are going to be part of the show tonight. And I was like, well, that's fucking cool. I was like, amazing. Hope it's great. See you there. Finally, the night of the show in Adelaide rolls around. So I go off to the show. Unlike the Melbourne show, again, the tickets were horrendously expensive. But unlike the Melbourne show, only I am going to this one. The closer to the stage you were, the more horrendous the prices were. But I was like, let's see where the right balance here is between getting a great seat and how expensive it is. And in the first flip of buying seats, I bought a seat that was pretty far forward, but quite a way off to the side. Knowing how important the visuals are to the show, I decided I'm going to all this trouble. I'm booking flights and accommodation. I'm coming all this way to see this show. I'm going to hate myself. Even if I spend all of this money, I'm going to hate myself coming to this show and sitting off to the side where I'm like, I get a crook neck from straining and looking at an awkward angle all the time. And I remembered, they had VIP packages that were right up the front in the middle, and they were horrendously expensive, but maybe I'll just give them another look. There was a gold package that was, again, I would have to mortgage my house to be able to afford it, but still very expensive. But like, you could go on stage before the show and take photos. You got early entry and all this stuff. And I was like, well, I don't need that. Then there was like a silver tier, and the silver tier was just like a great seat, early access. You can go and buy merch early if you want, And it comes with a hardcover photo book that's signed by David Byrne. And I went, for what I'm paying already for the ticket that I have, getting a big hardcover book almost justifies the upgrade to get this better seat, early access, can buy merch. I'll have a very comfortable night. This is a very bougie, privileged position that I'm in, but I was like, maybe I upgrade to that better ticket. So that's what I did. And I ended up with a silver VIP ticket. Now, to call it VIP is maybe a bit over the top, but let's just say it was a great seat. So then what happened was, I haven't been able to get any merch at the Melbourne show. I go to the Adelaide show and I'm like, all right, I know I'm getting this big, thick, heavy book. I know I'm going to want to buy merch. I got the black shirt and I got the cream shirt. I resisted the urge to buy the stickers, which were $10 each and seemed maybe a little bit overpriced. I also resisted the urge to get the vinyl slip mat because I was like, it's as cool as the coloring on all of this is. Having a psychedelic Technicolor slip mat doesn't match my decor. And then I didn't want to get the hoodie because I wanted to buy 2 items and the hoodie was over $100. And I was like, no, buy 2 shirts for the same price. So I did that. But I went into the show being like, I know I'm going to get a book. I might want to get a poster if they've got one because I missed out on the Melbourne one. I want to buy a bunch of shirts. I know I'm going to want to get a bunch of stuff. So I brought my backpack. That was all I brought. Emptied it out and brought it. So I walk in with my VIP ticket on my phone. I show it to the first guy and he's like, sir, I'm sorry, do you have a VIP ticket? I was like, yeah, here you go. And he's like, oh, okay, well, come on through, sir. I was like, thank you. Walk into the next part and this other guy, a security guy, is like, can I just, he's got his little wand thing. Can I just wand you down, sir? I'm like, absolutely, no problem. And he's like, I'm sorry, sir, but you can't bring backpacks in. And I'm like, what? He's like, you can't bring a backpack in to the stadium. And I'm like, bummer. Okay. Well, he wands me down. And he goes, go and leave it with that guy over there. He wands me down. He's like, off you go. Thank you, sir. I'm like, thanks. He's like, by the way, don't forget to go to the VIP stall over there to get your stuff. I'm like, okay. In my head, I'm doing quick equations. I'm like, okay, let's go get the book, put the book in the bag, and then I'll leave the bag. And then I've at least got that covered. Go to pick up the book. Lovely lady there says, hello, sir, here's your book. It's signed. And I went, thanks. Did you sign it? Ha, ha, ha. Walk off with the book, don't even really get to look at it, pop it in the bag and go drop my bag off. I've also got this VIP lanyard. Now, like I said, I didn't buy a gold VIP pass, but they gave me a gold VIP lanyard. So for what it's worth, I've got this as a keepsake. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know, what am I meant to do with this? So I put it on and walked around for, 10, 15 minutes, just having a drink and soaking up the atmosphere. And no one seemed to be like, oh, you got the lanyard. Come this way. Or the lanyard section is over there. Oh, you have a lanyard? Wow. Okay. Well, what we can do for you? No, nothing, none of that. So I kept the lanyard on for like maybe 10 minutes and then I just took it off. I felt like a fucking idiot and took it off, put it in my pocket, kept it there the whole night. Went down to my seats, quite close to the stage, right in the middle. Couldn't see the ground, which someone had said to me, if you're not seeing the ground, you're missing out. And I was like, well, I saw the ground level of the stage at the Melbourne show because I was midway back, right? This one I was so close that I couldn't see the ground, but I wasn't that worried. You can see from the photos that I've been putting up, the view is still pretty good. Now, one of the differences between the Melbourne and Adelaide shows that only people who care about those shows will care about. But during the sort of early section of the show, David seemed to want to bring up something that was local. So at the Melbourne show, he said, hey, we just got here. We haven't had much chance to walk around. I did see a photo that I think Lord posted, and it was a shot from, I guess, Lord's perspective, looking down the street and David looking up the street and seeing her and them and smiling. So I imagine those two bumped into each other or arranged to bump into each other. But what David showed on the stage at the Melbourne show was a shot of a statue with no head. And he's like, whoa, I saw this. This is crazy. He goes, apparently the head turned up on social media and someone was barbecuing it. So there you go. And then that was it for the Melbourne show. For the Adelaide show, a little bit more going on. I was ready thinking, is this going to be where they do the Byrne dance stuff? But no. He showed a bunch of photos. Again, I'd seen the dancers on the beach. And I was like, are they going to show photos of the beach? What's going to be on? Am I going to be in one of those photos? Am I going to be part of the show? But no. Just a bunch of photos of different stuff. He was like, this is Australia's only volcano. And this is, a bike path. And this is da-da-da. He pointed out a few things. And he was a bit unsure about some things. And at one point, he's just like, okay, look, you don't need me to explain your city to you. So then we get into the set list. They're ripping through all the songs. I'm having a great time. Different atmosphere than Melbourne. In Melbourne, by the time I got to the third song, and she was, pretty much everyone at the venue was up and dancing. And at this venue, because we were so close and because the seats were so expensive, right in the front couple of rows, a little bit more stuffy, a little bit more, we're very happy to sit and watch, thank you very much. A few people would get up and dance here and there, but not enough to have a critical mass to get everybody up, I suppose, until really the very end, the last few songs. The other thing to point out is that David recycled from the American Utopia tour his little announcement where he's like, the owners of the venue have said that if you would like to get up and dance, you can do that in your seats, but they ask, please do not dance in the aisle. And he said because the fire wardens have said that in the event of an emergency, people dancing in the aisle have an unfair advantage. And obviously that's the joke that Jerry Seinfeld helped him punch up, and he's reused it again from the American Utopia tour. They used that same recording in both of the shows that I went to. But like I said, they're ripping through the show. Obviously, when they play T-shirt, pops up on the screen, Melbourne kicks ass. Obviously, we're in Adelaide and they play T-shirt. Adelaide kicks ass, pops up on the screen. Apart from that, the show's more or less the same. Like I say, in Melbourne, they played Moisturize the Thing, and in Adelaide, they played I Met the Buddha at a downtown party. But the other key difference, obviously, is that right before, like humans do, this big poster pops up on the screen, and it's the Byrne dance poster. And then I'm like, here we go. And I pull out my phone. I was already taking lots of photos and annoying people, but I was also like, well, this is what I'm here to do. This is why I bought this seat. And if people aren't going to dance, I'm at least going to take a bunch of photos. But the Byrne dance poster popped up and I was like, this must be it. So he starts talking about how we were out and about. We saw this poster. It seemed to be some kind of dance event where people dance kind of like me. So we reached out to them and invited them along to ask if they would come up on stage, teach us, him and the band, how to do a Byrne dance. And then, I guess he was maybe in two minds about, are people going to go with this? But he got everybody up. They got everybody up in the stadium to stand up and do Byrne dances. And they were basically like familiar dances. It was very rudimentary to start with. And it was kind of like the sort of life during wartime, kind of bouncing your arms and knocking your knees together. And then the arm chop from Once in a Lifetime. So it was just that. It was just, they came out on stage. The people were amazing, super friendly and great. It seems like a great show. It seemed like a great opportunity for them to promote the show. They were on local news and everything the next day. But I was very happy for them to get that acknowledgement and recognition for something that just seemed so innocent and pure and inclusive, came from such a good place. David also obviously has a bit of a history with the Adelaide Fringe Festival, having gone there and put on like Here Lies Love and stuff like that. Just a great little unique story and happening from the Adelaide show. But then next thing you know, it was over. And I stood outside the front for a little while. People were buying merch. I already had my merch. I was just standing there holding it, watching them. People were sort of leaving. I stood outside the front for a little bit, waiting to get into a taxi. And there was signs everywhere saying, tonight, David Byrne live on tour. And it hit me that it was all over. It hit me that the last few days of thinking about Talking Heads, buzzing about seeing the shows, that it was all winding down. I think the next morning, David and his crew flew off to play in Perth, and they've just played, and now they're heading off elsewhere. We were in Adelaide for 4 days. I took 2 T-shirts. I wore one and had worn it for a few days, and it was getting a bit woofy. The second one, the instant I put it on, I spilled something on it, and I was like, well, I can't wear that one. Good thing I bought those David Byrne shirts. So I walked around for the last 2 days in Adelaide in my David Byrne tour T-shirts. But that's it. That's my thoughts on the Who Is the Sky tour now that I've seen it. And that was my experience going to those shows. To put a little emotional button on it, I had heard people say, I went to the show and I was just overwhelmed and I was just crying because I was so happy. At the Melbourne show, I had been in such a heightened emotional state and so tired from just a very busy week and a very busy day that day as well. But I I was okay when they played Heaven, but once he started playing Everybody Laughs, I mean, I wasn't crying, but my eyes were getting pretty watery. And I was, I had a lump in my throat. I was okay actually for the rest of the show, and I was okay for the whole of the Adelaide show. But yeah, clearly I was going through it a little bit. Now here we are on the other side of it. I David Byrne. Part of me after seeing those two shows was like, can I go to another show? Is there a show somewhere else that I can go to that's nearby and doable? But I think I think that's it. I think that's it for me right now. The last thing to point out, and I pointed this out before, is that Jerry Harrison's coming to Australia really soon. I'm going to be there to enjoy all of it. I'm going to have a special little, hopefully have a very special little preview for you very soon. If you enjoyed this, you will not want to miss that. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you enjoyed the shows if you went. Hope you enjoyed watching this. Take care. See you next time.